Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and since we don't have too much to talk about, I figure we would discuss wrestling a little bit. When AEW, All Elite Wrestling, was first coming back to television, I kind of mentioned how long it had been since I've watched, and I'll be honest with you, I've kind of enjoyed going back and watching wrestling. One moment. Okay. Hate these spam calls. Um. Anyway, I've enjoyed watching AEW, but besides AEW, I've also been watching NWA Power on YouTube. Uh, Episodes of Major League Wrestling, and I've been watching clips of New Japan. It it feels weird because, like I said, I had watched wrestling since I was 4 or 5 with my father, with my grandfather. They were both avid watchers of wrestling. And I'd watched up through the Monday Night Wars, up into what was basically WWE being declared the winner, up until the death of, well, not until, but that was the point I can kind of recall back and say, yeah, that's when I fell off. Because at that point, my viewing just went. Doot, 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 doot. I lost interest. But yeah, uh, just shortly after the death of Benoit, everything started to fall apart as far as my interest in wrestling. Because, as I've said before, yes, I know what he did is inexcusable, but he was, and there's still a place in my heart as a fan for Benoit. He was my favorite. And unfortunately, what happened just drove me away. It was one of the major contributors that I didn't really watch or pay attention to wrestling much a few months after he died because my viewing just kind of fell off. It went on for like a little while longer, then just fell off a cliff. I couldn't do it. I was like, yeah, it don't matter. There was something about when his music hit. Uh, it was outstanding. You know, his character as a kayfabe wrestler, he just didn't put up with crap. He didn't have to be a big talker, big showman. He just go out there and beat your ass. So yeah, and it hurt knowing what happened. Well, like I said, we've already discussed that, so we'll kind of move on. But I've been watching AEW, NWA, MLW, and even just clips here and there of like New Japan or Ring of Honor. I even watched the clip a couple times of the return of Edge to WWE. And that brought me back. I'll tell you what. Hearing that music kick. That brought me back a few years. But one thing I definitely notice is with your AEWs, the NWAs, MLWs, they all seem to try to reach into the pre-Monday Night War wrestling era and pull a little bit out. They, of course, want to put their own spin onto it, which is wonderful. You don't want to be too much of a carbon copy. But they definitely try to reach into that past of wrestling before the Monday Night Wars. With MLW, you have the actual name, the Von Erichs, which, if you are unaware, late 1970s into the early 80s, there was a wrestling family. Their actual name wasn't Von Erich, but that's what they changed the last name to. They had members Kerry Von Erich, Fritz Von Erich, Kevin Von Erich. There were several of them. I think Fritz was the father, and there was like 4 or 5 kids. But unfortunately, it was just a tragic story for that family because each one of the kids died so young. They had so much potential because all of them always were considered some of the better potential stars to be the next great hero of wrestling. And it seemed like every one of them suffered a horrible fate. You feel sometimes that family was cursed. But yeah, MLW has its version of the modern day Von Erichs, which I don't think they have well, like I said, Von Erichs wasn't the name of the original family either. It was a kayfabe name. So, I guess it don't really matter. I don't know if they are related to the original Von Erichs. That's a potentiality we'll have to really check upon. Also, in MLW, you have a lot of follow-up generation superstars. Davey Boy Smith Jr., which is not his name. He wasn't named directly after the British Bulldog, but I think he is the British Bulldog's progeny, if I remember right. You can see the resemblance. There's a Brian Pillman Jr., which he is the son of the original Brian Pillman, which I did watch wrestle. He was the loose cannon, Pillman was. So but yeah, there's a lot of that reaching back into wrestling's past. but there's also the newer stars because they share a lot of the same stars with AEW. MLW does. Jimmy Havoc, uh, MJF, which they do a pretty good job. Um, let's see. NWA. I am so ecstatic because if there's one thing about watching NWA, it's like watching the old school wrestling. Very much so. Timed matches. Um, this match is set for a 10-minute time limit and is for, you know, the U.S. Television Championship. It feels very much like that old school style of wrestling. Um, and they aren't afraid to dig into the NWA's past and say, and mention the names that have gone through the NWA because believe it or not, there were several big organizations that were on the scene before WWE ruled the damn roost. NWA, AWA, there were others. But yeah, the NWA, the National Wrestling Alliance, was split up into multiple territorial NWAs. The NWA South, NWA Mountain Wrestling, NWA Northwest, you know, that kind of stuff. And so they'd have a territory that they'd have their wrestlers in, but all being loosely connected. You could have these wrestlers go from one NWA to the other. And it was NWA South or Southeast or something like that that was bought by Ted Turner and turned into um, WCW. And so Turner was able to keep that NWA group um, and use the big names Flair, the Horseman, Dusty Rhodes. Um, I do not believe the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express were a part of it when it came under ownership and began its um, transformation into WCW. I'm pretty sure about that, but yeah, you had some pretty big names. But it was a collection of territorial organizations under the NWA banner. Because, like I said, at one point, wrestling was big. Professional wrestling was pretty damn big well before the Monday Night Wars. It had TV time slots like crazy in the 50s and 60s, 40s. It was one of the staples of early television. So, there's always been a connection to professional wrestling and television. But yeah, like I said, the NWA has not been afraid to reach back into its own namesake, its own history, and really build on that. And the matches really do feel like they are that old school style of wrestling. Um, they've got the world title, women's title, um, the tag team titles, the national title, and they recently reintroduced the television title. So it feels like we're getting back to prominence. One of the major players, if you've been watching NWA Power on YouTube, though, check it out. It's definitely interesting to watch. It's based out of it's the old school studio style wrestling, and it's in the it's out of Atlanta, Georgia. One of the major players you'll see is Billy Corgan. He's there quite often, and you can tell he's really trying to bring it back to the old. They're really trying to push the old school style wrestling. And if the name Billy Corgan don't mean anything to you, that's all right. He was lead singer Smashing Pumpkins in the '90s, early 2000s. Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness was probably their best album, double disc album. Anyway, keep from going too much into music. Um, I've also been watching a lot of the AEW, and like I said, they also tend to pull from that old school style a bit, putting their own spin on it. Like I said, they use a lot of the same wrestlers that you watch in MLW, Jimmy Havoc's, Maxwell Jacob Friedman's, and they have their own Hangman Adam Page's, Kenny Omega's, Dustin Rhodes. I think they've also some of the same wrestlers have also been on the RO Ring of Honor circuit. It really feels as if the wrestlers have more freedoms than the big age of WWE and oh, there's other people. Because suddenly it's like they have the a bit of freedom to go between organizations. And that was just not something you really saw during the Monday Night Wars. That's why Kevin Nash and Scott Hall showing up in WCW at the height of the Monday Night Wars was such a giant deal. You just did not see wrestlers uh, suddenly jump ship and show up until that point. You know, they had been moving in between, but following the the transformation of and the birth of WCW and its clash with WWE and its growth, you did not really see wrestlers moving back and forth between organizations, and that still wasn't really a back and forth situation. That was more of just, hey, we're suddenly in this organization. But what I'm talking about with AEW, Ring of Honor, New Japan, and MLW, it's not like they're under a contract the same way that it used to be with WWE or WCW. You specifically do matches for me and no one else. No, they work between the organizations, which makes me happy. It gives the wrestlers a bit of freedom. A bit of an opportunity to really expand who they are. You see, back in the age of the Monday Night Wars, if you were going to hop from one organization to the other, you had to change your identity and your character and everything. Dustin Rhodes and Goldust. He was let go from WCW. He went to WWE, and what happened? Hey, he's suddenly not Dusty Rhodes' son. He's an androgynous movie star. They didn't want to work with the characters as themselves, who the wrestlers had developed their characters as. They wanted to push their own characters, and it's happened with WCW wrestlers moving to, or WWE wrestlers moving to WCW. It was the same way. And that's why I'm kind of happy about this birth of AEW and its work with MLW and um, Ring of Honor. And I know Ring of Honor has also been working with um, NWA because you had Marty Scurll going, um, who's a mainstay in ROW, but or Ring of Honor, sorry, ROH, but has been showing up in NWA. Um, it's enjoyable to see these wrestlers crossing organizations, which for them, I love that they have the more of an opportunity to spread who they want to be as a character instead of being forced into these roles. But yeah, I'm happy they have that opportunity now. And New Japan's always kind of worked with the other organizations. It had a working relationship with WWE for a while, and I think it's. Um, I'm not sure on like some of the other organizations now, like AEW or NWA or MLW, Ring of Honor, or anything like that, but it's usually had an interesting working relationship with some of the American organizations like that. I know the former AEW women's champion, uh, Sakura. I can't think of her full name now. She always does the double stomp. She was a little old thing. She was the women's champion, but where she wrestled so often in New Japan, she often had to go back and forth. She's recently lost the title, though. I think it was to the native beast. No, Rio. That was her name, not Sakura. I was thinking Emi Sakura, who was a good wrestler. I think she did a great job as well. But yeah, Rio. She had the AEW women's title for quite a while there, and was wrestling between New Japan and AEW. Though she's recently lost the women's title. But yeah, my point though with AEW is also kind of reached back into that past. You know, it's got a lot of second and third generation stars. The sons of Dusty Rhodes, Dustin and Cody Rhodes, or Runnels if you wish. Um, but like I said, they're sharing MJF, um, Jimmy Havoc. Hmm. I don't believe Kenny Omega and Hangman Page should have been the new tag team champions. But I understand the want to push a storyline using that. We'll have to see how that goes. I've not watched in the last, really kept up in the last week or so because I've been so busy trying to get everything else done as far as all my videos. But yeah, um, I've still been watching a lot of the Be the Elite videos on YouTube and stuff though. And like I said, I've not really kept up with WWE. It's kind of the one organization I haven't watched because I kind of got sick of it so much. Where it was just, "Hey, we're WWE. Watch us or kiss our ass." It was kind of its attitude. But with the Edge's reintroduction, like I said, that kind of made me happy to see him back. And then after the Rumble, he went on Monday Night Raw, and immediately there's a feud struck up between him and Randy Orton. It felt like 2007, 2008, 2009 all over again. I'm like, wow. So yeah, it made me smile a bit. I haven't seen what's happened since, but yeah, the return of Edge, it made me smile a bit. But I just kind of wanted to reminisce and talk a bit about how things have been looking since AEW's been on the landscape. I've now started keeping up with the NWA. I've not really kept up with Ring of Honor too much, but I'll see some of the rumors and stuff going back and forth. Um, I've been watching some MLW though. It's kind of interesting. But yeah. But that'll be it for now. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. People want to tell you something you don't believe, tell them to cite their sources. They'll get angry if you make them prove themselves, or they'll give you the proof. I'll see you all in the next video. Until then, later.